Speed is the easiest thing to sell in the automotive world. It is measurable, demonstrable, and viscerally satisfying in a way that bypasses rational thought entirely. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. Top speed of 200 miles per hour. Numbers that land in the brain like a punch and leave an impression that lasts. The entire performance car industry is built on this foundation, and it has been extraordinarily successful at convincing the world that speed is the ultimate expression of automotive achievement. But there exists a parallel tradition. Quieter, older, and in many ways more sophisticated. A tradition that looks at speed and asks a different question entirely. Not how fast can this car go, but how completely can it isolate the person inside from the fact that they are moving through the world at all. This is the tradition of the pure comfort car. And the machines built in this tradition are, in their own way, more technically impressive than anything with a racing pedigree. Because comfort, it turns out, is a far harder engineering problem than speed. Speed requires power. Comfort requires control. Control over vibration, over noise, over the micro movements of a body traveling across an imperfect surface at sustained velocity. Every bump in the road is a problem to be solved. Every wind frequency that interacts with the body panel is an acoustic challenge. Every mechanical vibration generated by the drivetrain is an intrusion to be absorbed before it reaches the human body sitting inside. Solving all of these problems simultaneously, at every speed, across every road surface, in every weather condition, that is what the great comfort cars are built to do. And the ones that do it best are worth understanding. The Rolls-Royce Phantom has occupied the summit of this category for nearly a century, and the current generation, the 8th, represents the most complete expression of its philosophy yet. The architecture of this car was designed from scratch with a single governing principle. The person in the rear seat must not be aware, at any point, of the physical act of traveling. The Phantom's body is constructed from aluminum, not for performance reasons, but because aluminum can be formed into shapes with acoustic properties that steel cannot match. The entire space frame is filled with acoustic foam during assembly, foam injected into the hollow structural members, so that the frame itself becomes a noise-absorbing element rather than a noise-transmitting one. The windshield glass is 6 millimeters thick. The side glass is double-glazed, a technology borrowed from high-end architectural construction, applied here to a moving vehicle. The result is a cabin that measures, at highway speed, below 30 decibels of interior noise. A typical luxury sedan at the same speed measures somewhere between 60 and 65. The Phantom is, in measurable acoustic terms, twice as quiet as its nearest competition. The engineers at Goodwood call it the gallery, the idea being that the interior is less a car cabin and more a room you inhabit, a space with the acoustic character of a private library or a museum after closing time. The suspension system that makes this possible is among the most sophisticated ever fitted to a road vehicle. Each corner of the car rides on an air spring, controlled by a system that reads the road surface through sensors mounted at the front of the car, calculates what the rear wheels are about to encounter, and adjusts the suspension response before the impact arrives. It is, in effect, a predictive system, one that doesn't react to the road, but anticipates it. The result is that road imperfections, which in a normal car produce a sequence of movements, the initial impact, the rebound, the secondary oscillation, are in the Phantom reduced to something closer to a single, barely perceptible softening. Not absorbed, erased. The Bentley Mulsanne, before it was discontinued, occupied a similar philosophical space, but approached it differently. Where Rolls-Royce is serene and almost spiritual in its isolation, the Mulsanne had a different quality. It was warm, physical, deeply tactile in the way that only a car built largely by hand can be. The Mulsanne's interior was assembled using techniques that hadn't fundamentally changed in decades. The wood veneers were selected and fitted by craftspeople who could identify grain direction by touch. The leather was hand-stitched using a cross-stitch pattern that required training to master and time to execute. There were approximately 15 hides in a single Mulsanne interior. each one inspected individually before cutting, each cut piece mapped to a specific location in the car so that color consistency across the entire interior was guaranteed. The comfort the Mosan offered was not primarily the absence of sensation, it was the presence of the right sensations. Softness where you expected softness. Warmth where you expected warmth. The feeling, visceral and immediate, of being surrounded by things made with absolute care. The Mercedes-Maybach S-Class approaches comfort from a more technological direction, and what it achieves is remarkable for a car produced at the volume Mercedes is capable of. The rear suspension of the Maybach S is specifically retuned relative to the standard S-Class to prioritize rear passenger isolation above all else. The rear seats, available in an executive configuration that reduces the back seat to two individual thrones, recline to an angle of 43.5 degrees, with a motorized footrest that extends from the front seat back. The seat itself has a massage function driven by air chambers that inflate and deflate in sequences developed in consultation with physiotherapists. The ambient temperature in the rear cabin can be individually controlled for each passenger to within a single degree. There is a system called Magic Body Control, which uses a stereo camera mounted behind the windshield to read the road surface ahead at up to 100 meters and adjust each wheel's suspension response individually before the car reaches the relevant section of road. The technology is extraordinary, and in the hands of a skilled driver, or more accurately, in the hands of a professional chauffeur, the result is a rear cabin experience that has no meaningful parallel in ground transportation. What all of these cars share, beyond their engineering, is a philosophy about what transportation is for. They start from the premise that the journey matters. Not as background, not as a necessary evil between departure and destination, but as an experience in itself, one worth investing in, worth engineering for, worth treating as the primary purpose of the vehicle's existence. Speed, in this philosophy, is a distraction. A lower-order concern, something that the other cars can compete over. What's actually wrong with this? There is a particular kind of confidence required to build a car this way. To look at a world obsessed with performance metrics and lap times and 0 to 60 figures, and to say, none of that is what we are for. To commit entirely and without apology to the idea that arriving rested, calm, and undisturbed is a form of achievement, that silence is a specific its life. The best idea of mud bugs is too fast insonation. That stillness inside a moving vehicle is the hardest thing to engineer and the most valuable thing to deliver. The cars that have built their entire identity around this idea are, in the truest sense, the most serious automobiles ever made. Not the fastest, not the most exciting, the most serious, because they set themselves the hardest problem in the category, and they solve it completely.